But one thing that I did learn, even later on, is that, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? And that applies to money and finances more than anything else.
Welcome to the Path to Wealth, the show about well-being, fulfillment, and financial freedom. And I'm your host, Hannes Henschel.
Hello, everybody. Today we have Yonah Weiss. He's the cost segregation king. He's a very reflected individual in the real estate investor community, highly respected. He's been on hundreds of different podcasts. And if it comes to how to save millions of dollars in the cost segregation space, he's definitely one to talk to. But today we also want to explore a little bit of where he came from, what's his mindset, and what it took to get where he is now. So welcome to the show, Yonah.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
So let's dive right into, people in the real estate world and the cost segregation world know where you are today. But what I'm really interested in, how did you come to get here? Like, where are you originally from? And we want to hear a little bit more about your personal story.
Sure. Obviously cost segregation is, like you said, cost seg king. That's how people know me on social media. But there's more to the person than the cost segregation. So I appreciate the opportunity and have a pretty interesting story. Not your conventional one, although most people in the real estate world don't have a conventional story. A lot of people getting into the space after having done many other things, which is something that I've explored on my podcast with dozens or hundreds of guests. My story, really, I grew up in California, Southern California, Los Angeles to be more specific, and went to college. And at a certain point, I really wanted to visit Israel, which I'm a Jewish person, Orthodox religious person, and I wanted to, visit a place I'd never been to before. I have a lot of family and relatives, and obviously a lot of history there. And to me, religion is very important, and it's really a lifestyle more than a religion. And so to me, that was like a part of my life. And I was a teacher even up until that point. Like, I had been teaching in youth groups and in school and tutoring and private things like that as a teacher's assistant for many years throughout high school. So it was something natural to me. And I kind of took that path where I just ended up staying for many, many years and learning, studying, teaching. And that was the path I kind of led for many years. Got married, had a family, 6 kids, beautiful life, loving it. And at a certain point, I realized, well, guess what? A teacher's salary is not the highest. And I never really thought about it too much, basically living paycheck to paycheck, just enjoying life, not really thinking about how I'm going to pay for, my later on what's going to be. Because I was never really given that much of a financial education, which I think a lot of people aren't. And so I was no different, but I loved life, and I loved, the life that I was living and enjoyed it. And to me, money and finances was really very inconsequential. Obviously I had to pay rent, have to pay for, basic living needs, but I was never a business person and never really cared about how can I make more money? How can I do this? It was really about how can I help people? How can I give more? How can I share with the community? And so my mindset was basically focused on what can I do to help others? I started a nonprofit organization, helping people who are underprivileged, orphans, widows, sick people who are in financial straits. And I raised a lot of money. I was a fundraiser for that organization for many years, alongside being the teacher. And but at a certain point, this goes back about 6-7 years ago. You can see the gray hairs in my beard here. I'm not as young as I may look. But I decided, I need to do something else. I really do need to focus on my children's future a little more and figure out how I can make a good living, enough to not have to worry about finances for the long run. How to build wealth, right? Which I had never thought about really before. And I talked to some friends and just talked to people that I was close with that were successful in business. And I got some ideas from them. And real estate was a very common theme among a lot of my friends. Like, you got to invest or get involved somehow or another. And so that's what I did. I really just started learning. And as a teacher, I picked up very, very quickly a lot of things and just started to teach. And so that was kind of the backstory, very quick Reader's Digest version of the backstory, how I got involved in the real estate space to begin with. The rest is history.
So I know there's a little bit more to the part that when you moved into real estate. I know there's a particular individual that kind of helped you on that road. And I think one of the obligations, or one of the deals that came with it, is that you have to pay it forward. And I think given that you're a teacher, that's like something that's very natural to you. And also the way you expressed it, you actually wanted more resource in order to give more. That seems to be a common thread in your life. And I would like to hear a little bit more about that story, because I think it's such an relevant part of who you are, is that person not only took you under their wing, but also inspired you to pay it forward.
Yeah, that's it's a really incredible story. I believe you're picking up on something I had posted or maybe spoke about a podcast many years ago. And there have been many, many people in my life that have inspired me and been guides for me, have been, resources, not only spiritually, but, emotionally, financially supportive, mentors in many, many different regards. But this one particular individual was one of those people. And I was in a pretty low part in my life and really was looking for something. And if this is the story, correct me if I'm wrong, but it could be a different story referencing entirely. But this regardless is a great story. I went to him, and I don't like asking people for anything. I don't, obviously I think a lot of us have an aversion to that. But I said, listen, I'm in troubles. I had a family member who was in a little bit of a health scare situation that raised a lot of extra bills that I was not prepared to deal with, and really couldn't work either for a few months. And it was at that point that I turned to this friend of mine, a mentor, and said, listen, can you help me? Like, is there anything you can do? And he said, listen, I'm going to give you, let me know what your monthly expenses are. And we literally sat down, made an accounting and a budget. And I gave him a number, and he said, here, I'm going to give you 3 months worth of your living expenses. Okay. And I'm giving it to you as a loan on 2 conditions. He said, one condition is that don't tell anyone where this came from, because he was humble about it. He didn't want people. This guy was an extreme, huge philanthropist, but even more so than people know, because he does a lot of these kind of hidden activities with individuals and just doesn't like to get his name out there as
low profile.
Yeah. Low profile type thing, which I respect a lot, for various reasons. And the second condition, he said, is that if you later on you're going to be successful, you're going to find someone else in a similar situation. I want you. Well, first of all, he said this is a loan. He said, you don't have any time to pay this back. An interest-free loan, basically. He said, you can take this. I'm not giving this to you. Pay it back whenever you have that. Let's revisit this in like 3 years from now. He said, okay. So I had no pressure whatsoever, and he said, but when you do find someone who's in a similar situation, you'll know what to do. And that idea of, like you said, paying it forward was a lesson that was very powerful to me. And I think I've, really taken that to heart and go out of my way to look for, individuals or look for people, that I know in my life that may not be forthcoming with troubles or struggles that they're going through. But if I can help in any way, I'll try to, find out what I can do.
So what do you think was the quality he saw in you that made him so sure of your success in the future? Or what do you think is a common denominator that maybe derives the success that he finds to the people that he reaches out to?
It's a good question. I don't know. We were close to begin with, so it wasn't like just some stranger. It was someone that, I'd spent years with and known on a kind of, personal level. But one of the things that I find is integrity, and that's someone who holds to their word, someone who stands to their word, and someone that, will not go back on their word. And that's something that means a lot to me. And obviously that's maybe came through to him. He saw as someone who, because that's really a key component to success in life and in business. If you want to be successful, you don't think in the short term, how can I make a quick buck? And I'll just tell another great story, which has the same idea came through. In the beginning of my real estate career, I joined a individual who had a very, very, very small brokerage. Basically, a guy who went off on his own. He was working for a brokerage, became successful, opened up his own, so he didn't have to worry about splitting commissions or anything like that, and hired a couple people to work under him. Young guy, very successful, and the company was called Synergy Real Estate, and I really loved that. I had come off of reading Stephen Covey's 7 Habits and was a big fan of the idea of synergy. So I came across this guy and I was like, hey, let's see what you got going on. We ended up working together. A great team effort. We ended up becoming partners and doing a lot of deals together. And at one point, a lot of points throughout this partnership, we were brokering, residential properties. And oftentimes, as all brokers know, you deal with other brokers, other agents who are on the seller side or the buyer side or just trying to, et cetera. And you have to go through them. What we found is that, unfortunately, we came across, quite a few not so honest people, brokers. And it's unfortunate. But this one story, just this one individual, this one broker that we had to deal with, we were meeting with him and, I handed him a business card and we had just printed these new business cards and we created this new logo for Synergy. And it was like this kind of symbol of two people kind of intertwined together,
Okay.
And it was a really interesting kind of way of, conceptualize or visualizing what synergy is in a conceptual, a visual form. And, I said, Synergy Real Estate, and I handed the business card. He's like, what's that? What's that picture? I said, that's synergy. That's what's that. He's like, well, why don't you have like a picture of a house or a building? Because like it's a real estate. Like what's the deal with the people in it? And I was like, no, you don't understand. Like real estate is a people business. It's not a building business, right? But I understood keenly at that point that this guy saw it as, no, this is about buildings. I don't care about the people. This guy did not care. And I saw that and I was like thrown off by his comment. And I was like, I told my partner, I said, we shouldn't do this deal. We shouldn't do this deal with this guy. I said, I can't trust him. Like, he's gonna try to screw us out of some money. I know it. I know. Like I just had that feeling. And my partner's like, no. I've known him for some time. Whatever. Like I never did a deal with him before, but he seems like trustworthy. Whatever. Let's do this. It's a great deal. Like we'll make a lot of money. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to be involved. If you want to do it, you take it. I'm stepping out of this. So he ended up doing it, and the other broker ended up literally they closed the deal, but this other broker ended up screwing him out of like thousands of dollars of commission. He was like, oh no, it didn't come through, or this was from someone else, or whatever. I don't remember the exact details, but I remember my partner came to me. He was like, this is what this guy did. Like I was like, I knew it. I told you ahead of time. When you care about objects or the business or the transactions or the deals more than the people, you'll never be successful because greed is what is driving you, and greed will never give you long-term success.
Yeah, I think that rings very, very true. I also have one business partnership that went sour, and afterwards, when I was contemplating on it, I was like, yeah, it's okay. They were more interested in the outcome, the financial reward, and the greed, and I was more interested in the people aspect, in the long-term relationship. And I find one of the things in the multifamily space, it's a lot about relationships. And I think you know that very well. How do you identify, or how do you look for people to partner with? Like you've already mentioned in this particular case that you noticed this guy is going to go down the wrong path with you.
Yeah.
So how do you, in your current partnerships or in ventures that you get involved, how do you identify the characters you are actually willing to move forward?
It takes time. It really does. Yeah. You can never really know someone unless you spend enough time with them and maybe get other people who have done deals with them in the past and get some objective perspectives from a third party. But, in terms of doing my own deals and investing and partnering with people, it's very, very difficult for me to find people that I'm willing to, just because it does take so much time. You really do have to know someone well, because this, a partnership is, a marriage to all, for not talking about doing a transaction. Transaction is different. Transactions and the business, the cost segregation that I do, if you're a broker and you do transactions, you can do transactions with people, and that will, even people that you may not trust, even people that you may not get along with, it's very, very hard to filter that. But when you're talking about long-term, you're talking about partnerships, you're talking about business dealings, it takes a long time. I would say it's just getting to know people. They're always, the gut feeling is going to override everything else. And so if you're in tune with yourself and you're an honest person to yourself, and obviously that's a precondition there, but you'll be able to recognize others if you have that keen sense of self. And so it's just it's self-awareness, and it falls into place. I think when you act a certain way, you attract others who act in the same way. And so it's that like-mindedness and about the similar characteristics that really make true business partnerships successful, because you're not necessarily going to have the same skill sets as your partner, but you will have the same values.
You just used two terms that I would like to touch up on. One is self-awareness, and the other one is being tuned in with yourself. And for someone like you who is strongly rooted in, earlier you said religion, but for you it's more like a lifestyle. What does it mean to be tuned in with yourself? Because I'm sure the word self means something way bigger for you than for most people.
That may be true. I don't know what other people view that as, but it's about work. Self-awareness really comes from a point of growth, right? Realizing that this life is finite. Okay, we're here for an X number of years, and to try to maximize what we're doing in this world. And I believe in a higher power, that we're not in this world just randomly. There's a purpose to our lives, and so I'm in tune with, and I'm a very spiritual person. So I'm a daily praying and meditating and in tune with not just what's going on in my life, but all those around me, and how I can be a better person. Objectively, to the greater good for the world. So when you're in tune with that and constantly trying to become a better person, trying to grow, realizing that whatever I did until today is not enough. I need to work on myself. I need to become better. And so there are many, self-help books out there. There are different paths to go down in terms of, get the Tony Robbins, way and the inspirational way, or you take the 7 Habits and the Stephen Covey, the effective way. There are a lot of different paths you can go down that. I think everyone needs to find what their own path is, whether it's through religion, whether it's through, philosophy, whether it's through, like I said, these, self-awareness. But more than anything, it's just being aware that self-awareness, it's not about yourself, really. That's the truth of the matter is. It's like, I am really not what this world is. I'm not the most important thing in this world. Everyone else is. And so I'm just a part of the whole. And so when you look at life as that, then you can be aware that there are other people out there that have similar needs, have similar life goals. And so if my focus, me personally, I'm just talking to me, I'm not saying everyone is like this, but me personally is like, how can I help others? What can I do to see that others can achieve what they need to achieve? And I'll get to where I need to get to, whatever that is. Like, I truly believe that. I'm not worried about that. But if I focus, and there's a famous Zig Ziglar quote, and it's been, quoted by others before him in different variations, but, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get whatever it is that you need. Something along those lines, which means if that's your focus is others, then you'll get to where you need to get to.
Yeah, I think it's also Tony Robbins who said that business is a spiritual practice, and it's kind of about applying yourself to others more and add more value, and eventually in a odd way, life has its ways to get you what you maybe originally wanted or needed.
It can be sometimes a very roundabout way, but eventually it's all for the good.
Yeah. So what is something that you're currently working towards, maybe in terms of charitable work or something that you're currently investing a lot of your time in?
You know, the charitable work is really, that's all my time, to be honest. I think even all the business that I do, it's all that whatever I can make, I can just give back. You know, I live on what I live on meagerly and invest in, a small amount so that can keep growing. But whatever's left over, whatever causes, whatever needs in the community and at large are out there, I'll jump on it.
Yeah. Awesome. So we already spoke a bit about mentors, and you said that you had a very rich environment of people that kind of spoke life into you and helped you in different ways. For someone who doesn't have that access to mentors or to those kind of figures, where could they get started to maybe get a similar kickoff like you had? I mean, I for example, I didn't feel like I had a mentor-rich environment like you just referred to. So for someone that comes from a different background, where can they go and find, maybe it's books, podcasts, or materials, and seek out that knowledge that actually made a difference for you?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. There's really no shortage of people out there that are giving of their time, giving of their energy. It may not be one-on-one. You may, find it through a book. You may find it through a podcast. You may find it through, YouTube videos or whatever it is. But there are plenty of people out there, even, you find on social media, you follow, et cetera, that you'll learn a tremendous amount from. Like, there are plenty of people that I've never met, people that, I have not lived in the same generation as, that I, see as, spiritual mentors in a way. Because when you immerse yourself in the thought process and in the writings or in the, the knowledge of another person, you really get tuned in to what it's about. And obviously there's no comparison between a one-on-one apprenticeship of sorts where you can sit by someone, you can walk with them, you can talk with them, you can follow them around. There's no comparison to that. So if you can find that in any regard, whatever it is, how you find that, I mean, whatever your focus is, figure out how to get in the proximity of those that are in that same focus group. So, for example, let's take real estate. Okay, I know a lot of people listening to this probably invest in real estate or are looking to invest in real estate. You may have a local like a real estate investment association group that meets on a monthly basis. You may have there are tons of Zoom nowadays since the pandemic started a couple of years ago. These Zoom meetups that are happening. There are conferences to go to. You just go and meet those people, and don't say, and this is something that I heard from a very smart person. Never tell someone that you want to be your mentor, right? What can I do for you? Never say that, because what you're doing is giving them a job, right? Now they have to figure out what it is that they can give to you or they can allow you to. Instead, figure out or find out, something that they need, or something that can be useful to them, and offer to do it for them, like intern or do it for them for free, just to have that proximity. And they may say no, right? And that's fine. But at least you gave it a chance.
I think that's a very valuable point you just made. I mean, if you just ask them, what can I do for you? Then you're actually taking away from them first before you add any value. But if you figure it out yourself and you just go, eventually maybe there's even a chance you can just do it for them without their approval, and you got a shot at actually adding value to them.
Right.
So what do you think are some of the traits for someone who is eager? Like, you're in a stage in your life where you might be eager to share what you've learned, and obviously you have that teaching spirit, so you're always eager to share what you've learned. What are the traits you look into or look for in a student that that's somebody who will take this torch forward? That both of us know that all of the knowledge is out there, but there's only few who apply it. So how do you identify the students that you think are worthwhile of your time?
That's a great question. Obviously commitment and, any type of student there's a time commitment there, right? You have to time is an extremely valuable asset. And I think for people who are very successful, is probably considered the most valuable asset they have, which means you have to be very careful how you spend it and how you invest that time. So it's a great question that you pose. I think one of the first things that I'll look for, and I'm not really looking, to be honest, for students, but people that, that would, want to learn in any regard. One of the most important factors is, the willingness to share, meaning that they take the initiative of actually taking whatever it is that they're learning and disseminating or sharing it onwards. So that's because that the message is not going to be lost. The message, and I've as a teacher, everyone, as any teacher knows, that you learn more by teaching than you do by actually learning, right? There's enough, you can read 100 books, but the one that you actually, do a report on or actually give a presentation on, that's the one that you're going to remember the most out of all of them. So find, someone who has that same quality, and that's someone that's probably worth investing the most time in.
So I will use that as a segue. How did it come about that you're so incredibly knowledgeable about cost segregation? And because you really pour it out, what sparked that interest, or why did it become so natural for you to go into that cost segregation space?
It was really, the opportunity presented itself. So I wasn't seeking out cost segregation. It sucked me out, if that's a word. Seeked me out, right? That's it. It somehow or another, it came upon me, and I reached out to this company, Madison Commercial Real Estate Services, the biggest national cost segregation company. It was just an opportunity. I was introduced through a friend, and they were hiring, and it was just a perfect fit at that moment. And I knew very little about cost segregation at that time. But what I learned very quickly was that nobody really knew anything about cost segregation. The more people that I asked about it, the more people I found had very little knowledge, including CPAs, which was to me astounding, given that it's a tax strategy. You would think that more CPAs had a better knowledge of it, and unfortunately that wasn't the case. So, or fortunately for me. And so I just really took my teaching skills and applied them and just learned everything I could about the subject. And thankfully, the company I work for have some of the real experts in the country, both on the tax end, the engineering end. And so some of the CPAs that have been doing this for decades, and not necessarily the best teachers, and not necessarily the best people that could give that over, which is also something I found. It was just a lack. Any time that you find a lack or you find a void, that's an opportunity. Okay. And so I found this void. I found that nobody, or virtually nobody, was talking about this subject. And those who did talk about this subject spoke about it on such a technical level that the layperson could not understand it and could not apply it. So I just simply simplified it. Really, that's what I tried to do. Every single conversation that I had, and just was interviewed on a podcast. I was like, hey, this is fun. I could do this even more. And I just kept doing that until, to this point, I'm been interviewed on hundreds of podcasts, and I lost count at a certain point, and do webinars on like a weekly basis on the subject. And it's just great, because the more you delve into it, the more you learn yourself. And so the better you master at the craft you become. And, I couldn't do it without the company that I work for, right? Meaning there's an extremely complicated process to doing this tax deduction, this tax benefit. But knowing about it is really the most important thing, because if you don't know about it, you can never really do it. It would be difficult to apply it. Yeah.
From a passive investor's perspective, how can they make sure that their syndicators have a successful cost segregation? Because for passive investors, I find beyond trusting the operator, it's rather hard to understand some of the nuances that actually make a successful syndication. How could they possibly understand if they went through a successful cost segregation process?
Well, hopefully the syndicators themselves are going to be straightforward and transparent with the investors, and let them know ahead of time whether or not they're actually going to be doing a cost segregation study, whether that's going to be part of the benefit of the investment. and who they're going to be working with. Unfortunately, as limited partners, you really don't have a say as investors in a lot of these details, but it's worthwhile at least trying to figure it out if you can. So asking questions and interviewing. And again, this comes back to what we spoke about before, right? Partnering up or investing with, you want to make sure you're doing your research. Are these people trustworthy? Are they going to be the ones that they're going to be good stewards of my hard-earned money? And I think that's part of the interviewing process. Yeah.
So when it comes to actually going into the process of cost segregation from a syndicator standpoint, what are some of the questions that they need to kind of refine before they bring the process to you as a professional cost segregation king in your case?
Yeah, there's not too much work on the syndicator's end, on the real estate investor or any property owner for that matter. You don't have to be a syndicator to benefit from cost segregation. Any property owner, whether it's a business or investment property, as long as it's not your personal residence, can benefit from it. So it's really a question of, I think the most important thing to consider is whether or not you have a tax liability and whether or not you actually need these extra deductions, because not everyone does. I mean, there are enough people out there maybe have other losses or other, businesses that aren't doing well, and they may not need the extra deductions, but, and to make sure that they are what's called a real estate professional. The tax code. Yeah. The U.S. tax code has very specific rules with regard to who can actually benefit from these deductions beyond their rental income. So if you invest in a lot of real estate, you have the benefit of having that passive income, what's called passive income at least, and using the depreciation to offset that, meaning to reduce your taxable income, hopefully to zero. However, if you're not a real estate professional, it's just going to be limited to your passive income. But if you are a real estate professional, meaning if you spend the majority of your time in the real estate trader business, you're a broker, manager, doing things, you own property, you can actually use those deductions against your active income as well, or your spouse's income, which means that's really where the main benefit is going to come from.
So the main benefit is really for professionals and less so for passive investors.
Correct. Meaning the passive investor will still have the benefit from the investment itself, which there are very few other investment vehicles where you can get returns on that investment, and those returns during the life of ownership can essentially be tax-free. So that in of itself is extremely beneficial, but beyond that, unless you're the real estate professional status, you're going to be limited to how much of that you can use beyond your rental income.
So in terms of holding strategy, I know, so we're usually in the classical value add segment, we're holding for a 5 to 7 year period. Mm-hmm. How does the cost segregation play out for someone who actually plans to hold the property for a longer time, but still takes it all now?
Yeah, I mean, usually it's going to benefit people in different ways. And so the main benefit is when you're looking at your real estate investment portfolio as a whole and not on an individual property level, right? Because on an individual level, if you take benefits up front, so after 5 or 6 years, you're going to be left with less benefit, okay? Meaning you front load from potential deductions, you front load a certain portion to the earlier years. So the later years are going to have less. But when you look at your entire portfolio as more holistic, then you're going to be able to use deductions from one property to offset income from another. And so as long as you continue investing and continue to buy more properties, you're going to just keep rolling that over.
Yeah. So there's a lot of strategy involved, like in most of the things when it comes to creating wealth. I mean, most of the professionals we speak to, it's all about strategies. And, not just knocking at the door of your CPA after you kind of finish the year off. It's actually being strategic, forward-moving, and taking a holistic approach, looking at the entire portfolio and then kind of acting accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to borrow from Stephen Covey again, the 7 Habits, being proactive, right? That's the first step. The first step is being proactive. The second step is begin with the end in mind, right? You have to strategize to be, to take a lot of these advantages. You really have to think long-term and not think short-term.
Would you say strategizing is something that sets people apart from wealthy and maybe just paying your bills, like having
Absolutely.
that mindset. Yeah.
I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
absolutely. It's funny because, people like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I didn't have much financial education.
Yeah.
But one thing that I did learn, even later on, is that, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? And that applies to money and finances more than anything else.
So where did that moment, or what was the moment for you beyond those bills that you mentioned, the medical bills, that really urged you to gain that financial literacy? Because I think it's very common, more common than not, that you as well as I didn't grow up with that financial wisdom that we eventually seeked out. But I think all of us had that key moment where we're like, okay, this is not getting us where we need to go to maybe give to our community the way we want or live the life we want. What was one of those key moments besides maybe that medical moment, medical bill moment that you mentioned?
Sure. I don't know if there was a moment per se, but it was more about just being around the people that were doing that, and just
proximity.
Having that proximity, that exposure to others who are living that life, and it rubbed off, and it became so apparent that, oh wow, I never really thought about this before. You can invest passively, you can do this, you can, seeing these stories, and especially as I started to to be involved with the cost segregation and talking to hundreds of clients, hundreds of people that were very successful, buying a lot of real estate. I'm like, wow, how are they doing this? Let's learn, let's figure it out, let's try to do it ourselves, and that's really where the momentum started.
So how do you plan on giving this to the next generation? I know you have a nice family. How do you teach it to your kids now that they're growing up?
Little by little, I don't know if I don't really have an exact science to it, but just having these conversations, talking about money, and which is something I didn't really do growing up too much. Talking about finances and about the differences between assets and liabilities and things like that. I could actually have something that makes me money, and as opposed to something that's just, I earn money and then I give it back and I go through the cycle. And I think more importantly is, just teaching them the values about life and about being, an honest person and being someone that's trustworthy, because that will go so much further. The money will come and go, but if you can't, if you're not a good person, if you're not an honest person, then all the money in the world is not worth it.
I agree. I like this. So maybe you can touch up on this a little bit more, because I think this is for me too where the real value of life is. And I've always looked on a very long trajectory, but you've already mentioned integrity and trust as some of the key pillars, and just raising children now, as you said, as honest individuals. What are some of like the core values that you're giving to your kids besides this?
It's fascinating. I mean, we teach our kids in the Jewish community at a very, very young age about interpersonal laws, and we have a lot of religious, laws that go with, how to treat other people's property and things like that. Yeah. Giving, which is something you don't really think about too much. Little kids, if you have kids, that they can be somewhat destructive, at times. They'll just do whatever they want. They don't think about repercussions. They don't think about, consequences of their actions. And these are some of the principles we teach at a very, very young age. If you find a lost object, for example, you have to try to figure out how to return that, how to go out of your way to find who that belongs to. If you, things like that, where if you cause someone damage, you have to pay that. If you break something, you have to fix it, or you have to, pay that. So it gives you a more of an awareness of thinking about others first, and I think that's so powerful, and really, that's really the roots of where all this comes from.
I think if I sum up this conversation in one word so far, it's others. Like you really made others the focus of the work you're doing. It's paying forward, it's teaching, it's giving. So I feel like you really integrated that essential teaching in your life and the way you live it. And one of the ways I see you leveraging this community is LinkedIn. I mean, you're so active on LinkedIn. It's like a different game altogether.
Yeah.
So how do you reach others over a platform like LinkedIn? Because I know you're kind of on top of your game there.
Yeah.
And it's tying in really well into your public perception.
It's a great platform to build brand awareness, right? Personal brand, right? And what that means is brand awareness means when people see you, they know exactly who you are and what you do. Okay. Yeah. And so, being present and being consistent is really how to do that and how to maximize that. I mean, it's a long-term, it's a game really is what it is. But it's something that is so powerful. And when you bring in what we were talking about before about being other focused, social media is so easy to be other focused. And the amazing thing is, and going back to the quote I said before, the more you give to others, the more you'll get back. And not that you're doing it to get something in return, but you don't have to worry about yourself, because the more you focus on others, you'll get everything you need and tenfold, instead of just focusing on yourself. And so social media, especially LinkedIn, is such an incredible platform to do that with, because just engaging on other people's posts, right? Even if you're not making your own posting, which I encourage, I think it's a great way to build your own brand and to build, to share what it is that you do with the world, and build credibility for sure. But engaging with other posts is the easiest. And that's actually takes, more, it's more thoughtful, maybe takes more time, but it actually, can be 10 times more efficient. And I've written an article on this many years ago based on Gary Vaynerchuk's principle that he called the $80 strategy. And this is something that he did many years ago on Twitter and on Instagram, where he would spend $80 a day. What does that mean? He would put his 2 cents on 90 different posts a day. So 2 cents is your thoughts. You put your thoughtful, comment, and strategically. And if done right, it can be extremely strategic. And if you put your 2 cents on 90 different posts, that's spending $80 a day. Now, I don't think that's humanly possible. He supposedly did it for.
He's pretty extreme when it comes to that.
He is extreme, and now he has a huge company of people doing it for him. But this is back before he had that, and he said he was spending 6 to 8 hours a day just commenting on other people's posts. Now, I've done that. And even if you spend 6 to 8 hours a day, you can't, I don't think it's humanly possible, maybe his thumbs are faster than mine, but so I condensed it down to 18-cent challenge, which means just spend 9 posts a day, but go out of your way to find 9 other people that you want to, consume something that they wrote or something they shared, and leave a thoughtful comment, or maybe a question or something that can actually engage that conversation further. And if done right, not only will you be helping that other person, but you'll be seen by everyone else that sees that post, because the top comment is seen by everyone. And that is that's an incredibly powerful social media strategy right there.
So what I'm seeing is you're really a lifelong learner and so growth oriented. Like, what I'm consistently hearing between the lines is you always look for the next level. What is something you currently try to knock off as the next level? What are you working on right now?
I mean, one thing I'm working on, and there are many things I'm working on right now, but one thing is trying to be more involved on an active level on the real estate investment side. I've done a lot of passive investing. I've done some investing years ago, but I'd love to get involved on a more active level on the capital raising and on the actual operations of commercial real estate, because I see that's where real wealth building is made.
It's where the honey is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome, Yonah. I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for joining us today at the Path to Wealth. And thanks for sharing your story, your insight. I think it's a very well-rounded story to hear, from a spiritual to a financial aspect. I think there's a lot in here. So thank you so much for sharing.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us at the Path to Wealth. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our upcoming guests and be sure to share it with all your friends and family that want to take their life to the next level of wealth.